Welcome everybody to another Sales Hacker webinar. Thank you so much for spending the next hour or so with myself and my man Tito Bortz at the Sales Hacker community. My name's Alex Williford. I'm a growth marketer here with Sales Hacker. But let's be real. The real reason you guys joined is for the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Tito Bort himself. Tito, how's it going, man?
Man, I'm so excited. Some people might have seen my LinkedIn post a couple of minutes ago or 2 hours ago. We run this data experiment starting in October. Spent a bunch of time collecting data, analyzing it, reaching out to people, doing all that. I put the results out at a high-level version on LinkedIn, and I had so many comments across 3 different posts that LinkedIn literally blocked my account. I couldn't comment anymore. I had commented over 1,500 times in one day, and it just blocked me. So I wanted to invite everybody to this webinar. I wanted to show everybody the report and all that. And it was just too difficult to do through social media. So thanks for allowing us to use Sales Hacker as a platform to share all the results. And the other thing I'm excited about is I was feeling bad about the report because I didn't want to tell you what the conclusions are really upfront in our report, because one vendor might be annoyed at the way I'm analyzing the data. And then it was going to be really, really hard to share just raw data in a report. I didn't want to make it 40 pages. Nobody was going to read it. So I think doing a webinar, having a good conversation, allowing people to do Q&A, and just compile this all in a video that people can watch at their leisure rather than having to be sitting on their computer scrolling through a PDF or a report is a much better methodology and delivery method. So thanks, Alex, for having me.
Yeah, man, we're stoked to have you. That's a good point. So everyone on the webinar right now, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A box. Go ahead and open that up. And then as we're going through this experiment that Tito set up, you can ask him questions, pick his brain, really take this in what direction you want to. It's one of the benefits of attending these live, right? Is you can actually talk to us and interact with us. So open up that box down at the bottom, Q&A, any questions you have, hit us up with them. So Tito, for anyone on the webinar who's not familiar with your LinkedIn post, give us the super quick 101 high-level rundown of the experiment you set up. What are you testing? What are you looking for? What metrics are you using to evaluate success, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, exactly right. So here's what I was trying to figure out, right? I'm a sales development outsourcing company. We spend over $100,000 a year just in data. And we buy data from various data sources. We're customers of many of the providers. And what I was thinking is, well, first, what happens if I just drop one of these? If I just stop using one, how much data am I going to lose and how many connects am I going to lose on the phone? And then also, are there any other data vendors that I might not be using that could be a good complement to what I have? So wanted to understand a few things. If I source data from different sources, what is the overlap versus complementary of the data sets that we're getting? 2, is anybody giving me data at a more cost-effective rate or an easier to use rate or anything like that that would help me optimize my team? Because the way we operate at scale with dozens of SDRs across a dozen clients or so that we're providing sales development services, a increase in connect rate of 1%, going from 4 to 5 or from 3 to 4 or from 7 to 8, depending on the client, could have a significant impact on the number of meetings and on the revenue on the bottom line and how much we can charge clients. So it was a little bit selfish to start with, but as soon as I started talking to people, be like, hey, how interesting would it be for you guys to know what data vendor to buy? LinkedIn went nuts because everybody's trying to figure this out. What is the best data set? So I ran an experiment, and in this webinar, I'm going to run you through how it was set up, what we did, how we collected the data, how we distributed the data, what results we got. And then I'm going to tell you my opinion on the results, but it's non-conclusive. You make your own opinions at the end. I think that if you see the methodology and the data, you're going to like it. And then we're thinking of doing other experiments, and we're going to ask you your feedback. Should we run experiments now in APAC or EMEA? Should we run experiments for other buyer personas? Should we run, what do you want us to do? And what feedback do you have on our methodology? We think it's really world-class, or we're open to more suggestions.
Yeah, I think the really cool thing that people are going to get out of this is the methodology, right? Because I would imagine that just giving them hey, we ran this experiment across this persona, and here are the results. That's useful insofar as if they're using the same ICP. if they're defining the same like ICPs in terms of title, industry, company size, etc. But if you're in a completely different industry, which data vendor has the highest quality data? It's probably going to vary, right? So I'd imagine it's going to be really valuable to pay attention to the methodology you used, so that people watching this webinar can take it and then replicate it at their company to find which data vendor works best for them. So pay special attention to the methodology, right? So let's just jump right into it, Tito. I know you wanted to share your screen, show us the methodology. Let's do it.
Yeah, man. Like all my webinars, if people are watching this, I have a bunch. I think 4 or 5. I don't do them too often, but when I do them, I try to make them really, really awesome. So here's the way we set it up. We tried to be very scientific about this. I actually have a behavioral economics and decision neuroscience degree from Duke University. Part of what I studied was how to run like really good experiments with data so that you can understand what's having an effect on stuff or what's not. Research methods in psychological sciences was the class that I took that got me thinking in this way. And I recommend, now it's actually even mandatory for employees at Altisales that want to move into our data department or run experiments to take those courses on Coursera. You can find them and they're great. So here's the way we set it up and the way we're thinking about it. The first thing we said is, okay, we first want to reach out only to ideal customer profiles, and we want those to be fair. So we picked one of my portfolio companies. I'm an angel investor. They're a client of ours too. The company is called Marpipe. They have an incredible product. But what the companies they sell to are companies that have Facebook ads running. And we need a good amount of Facebook ads because it's about A/B testing your Facebook ads. So we literally manually went through a gigantic list of companies and we picked 330 companies that had at least like 10 Facebook ads running. We determined those to be A companies. We grabbed those 8 companies, we went on Sales Navigator, and we found the buyer personas that we were trying to target. In this case, it was a marketing persona. And we extracted around 1,300 leads out of Sales Navigator. We got their name, last name, company, LinkedIn profile, all that. We have a data research team in the Philippines that assists with all this, so it didn't take us a ton of time, but it took them a lot of time to do this. We made sure that all the titles were clean according to the search criteria that we're looking at. And then we wanted to limit the number of employees that we had per company that we were targeting. We limited it to 6 people for the experiment. And then we grabbed those 6 people and we divided them across the vendors. So we had a few different vendors come in and tell us that they wanted to participate in the experiment. You see some of them here. Some of them were discarded early on. We're only looking at data vendors that have a platform. So if somebody says, send me a list and I'll enrich it and send it back, the reason we excluded any vendor that has that methodology is that for an experiment like this, they could cheat and go above and beyond their usual process for enriching and like get better data. Like literally, if we go by like goodleads.com or whatever like vendor, imaginary vendor, they could, for the experiment and for the experiment only, they could go on ZoomInfo, Lucia, LeadIQ, Sales Intel, like all these different data vendors, enrich the data across all of them, come back and say, look at our data, we have the best. But truly, when you use them, you can use them. So we didn't even let any of the vendors know which leads we're going to enrich. We just told them, we need access to your platform. We're going to go in there. I'm going to extract the data ourselves, just like regular users. We grabbed all those tools. We went in, we enriched about 250 leads per tool. I'm going to show you what those look like. And then we uploaded them into Outreach and we tagged them. These are leads from ZoomInfo. These are leads from Lucia. These are leads from LeadIQ. These are leads from Sales Intel. And as a kind of like security part or making sure that we don't overlap or use old data, we made sure that every lead that we're uploading into Outreach was net new. So we didn't have any pre-existing data in our systems before. These were all net new leads. And finally, we distributed those evenly across our SDRs. So SDR number 1 is working, let's say 100 leads this week. He's going to be working 25 from ZoomInfo, 25 from Lucia, 25 from LeadIQ, 25 from Sales Intel, which was the initial experiment. So that's it. And then within Outreach, we know a few things. We know the email deliverability rate, meaning what percentage of emails actually got delivered. And then we also know our phone connect rate. We're using a trigger where, according to the custom dispositions on Outreach, we know what calls ended up being picked up by the intended persona that we're targeting. Last things that we were considering as we analyze the results is the bounce rate on the emails. some vendors might guess emails more than others. And also, we made sure that the number of VPs or C-level executives was even across all vendors and across all SDRs, so nobody had like harder to reach targets. And then obviously all the leads were LinkedIn verified, so we made sure that if an email bounces, they have an active LinkedIn profile where they still say that they work at that company, and that was done as well. That's the setup, Alex. What questions do you have, or do we have anybody from the audience asking anything specific? What could have we done better here? Is there any flaws that they're seeing in the experiment?
Yeah, let's see. No questions rolling in about the actual step-by-step instructions yet, Tito, but I have a feeling we may get some right now. Like, can you guys see this working at your company? If not, why? Anything else you would add? We do have a couple questions, one from Chad Williams. Where can we get the report of the experiment you ran? And Chad, we got good news. That's next step here. We're going to be revealing that today, very soon.
Yep, I'm going to show you the report. So let's dive right into that. So here is the data that we collected across the vendors. And before I showed even this to you guys, we showed it to the vendors themselves. And we said, for momentarily, and you might have seen this screenshot, I had hidden column B, which is like the actual vendors, because I don't want you to focus on the vendors yet. I want you to focus on the methodology. So what did we do? Here's the number of leads that we assigned for each vendor. What percentage of emails do they have correct, meaning that this email is delivered, and then how many bounced? So vendor one had 74 emails delivered and 4% email bounced, 65 versus 0.7 and 70% versus 0. So in my criteria, I would say that vendor one and vendor three are fairly similar in email accuracy. And remember, this is marketing personas within companies running at least 10 Facebook ads. It's very specific. So this isn't everybody and anybody should always use a vendor one or three over vendor two. But this is what I would recommend for marketing personas in these circumstances. Then we looked at what was their phone connect rate. So vendor one connected with 23, vendor two with 17, and vendor three with 21. And that means that their phone connect rate was as follows. Now, my interest, as I said in the experiment, was what happens if you only have budget for one tool and one tool only? So we said, what happens if this is your solo provider? We looked not only at the leads that were given to each vendor individually, but we said, out of the leads that were given in total, out of these 790 leads, how much of that data would have we gotten accurately if we only used vendor one, or if we only used vendor two, and if we only used vendor three? And our conclusion was that vendor one had the most data across all those leads, meaning if you only have money for one, the one you should keep is vendor one. I also wanted to know another thing. What happens if you have money for two vendors, but not all three, right? If you have two vendors, how much would you lose if you dropped a vendor? So if you drop vendor three, you will lose almost 25% of your data accuracy. And what that means is that this is the worst one to drop. This is the one you should definitely keep. In the other two, you would only lose 19 or 17%, right? Or, well, 18 and 16%, to put it that way. For us as a company, that's still a big drop. I don't want to drop even vendor three, because if I'm losing 1/6 of my connects, and my average connect rate is 6% right now across my campaigns, if I go down to 5%, that hurts me a lot. So my decision as a company, and the conclusion that I've gone from this study, is I'm going to continue to use all three vendors combined, because I want 100% of the data accuracy. And maybe I even need to start thinking about a fourth vendor. Could somebody else supplement this data further? What happens if we combine these three? Are there any other ones that would supplement it? So that's like the high level conclusions. I can get a little bit more in depth into how we structure this. So you can see, for example, that this is some of the data from ZoomInfo, right? And we're gonna hide that. Maybe you'll cut that off the recording, Alex.
Yeah, you got it.
So here what we're looking at is, this is the data that we manually extracted. Well, actually, I should do this first. I'm gonna show you guys all the leads that we extracted directly from LinkedIn. So we have all the companies, all the first name, last names, titles, cities, LinkedIn profiles, and we have a LinkedIn ID that we assign them, and so on. So by looking at this data, you can see how we extracted the data and how we assigned it to the different vendors. And it was at random. ZoomInfo, Sales Intel, ZoomInfo, Lucia, LeadIQ, ZoomInfo, Lucia, LeadIQ, Sales Intel, and so on and so forth, and it's evenly distributed. And then if we go to each vendor, you can see the same. Like here we have the title, the city, all the information, and I've hidden the columns. So obviously, I'm not allowed to share phone numbers and emails of any of these people, but these are the ones that were researched by ZoomInfo, and you can see that it was a thorough experiment. And then we uploaded these to the different SDRs. You can see exactly, some of the letters or the first names of the SDRs that it was given to. And we did the same with Lucia, LeadIQ, and Sales Intel. So it's very, very similar methodology across all of them.
So we're getting a few questions, Tito. I think this is a good time to surface them up. A few questions on which geography all this data is from. It looks like it's all US based.
Correct. Geography for the initial experiment was marketing personas, US based. Mm-hmm. And what's coming next is we want to do more personas, and for the time being US based. Unfortunately, Altisales as a company, 95 to 97% of our work is in the US. So running an EMEA or an APAC experiment will be a little bit more work. We're looking to partner up maybe with another company that wants to run this with the level of strictness and the accuracy of the data that we're running it. But in the meantime, correct, all US for now.
Awesome. Okay. A couple good questions from Christopher Krellin. We'll start with, did you evaluate the companies yourself, or did you have a BDR evaluate? And my understanding is it's a pretty objective evaluation, right? You're using these metrics here, percent bounced, percent email connect, to evaluate the different vendors. It's not like a subjective evaluation that you have a BDR going in and like scoring, right?
No, we told every vendor, hey, you can come in and give us access to your platform, and do you want to participate in the experiment? Right. It was really funny because the first thing we shared with the vendors is, hey, here is the process. And when we showed this process, a few vendors dropped out. They're like, oh no, we want to enrich the data ourselves.
Yeah.
If we can't do that, we don't want to participate. And I bought data. I've been buying data since 2011, so 9 years now. And I remember the first time I asked a vendor to send me a sample file. They said, send me 50 leads, I'll send you a sample file. I was like, incredible. I sent them 50 leads, they came back. They were incredible leads. And then I was like, sure, let me buy 20,000 leads. And I paid like $5,000 or $10,000. And then I started working the list, and I was like, those sample leads were really good. The rest of the leads are so bad. And I realized it was a common tactic. Like one of my friends that works for a data vendor company told me, dude, that's obvious. You're going to be using a platform, and you can't let people enrich it themselves, because for the sample file, they're going to put 10 times more effort, which makes sense. So that is why people run away. Some other vendors still decided to participate, and they said, even with the platform, we want in. And we actually had, I don't want to disclose names because this is not about like, putting people down or saying who's bad, but we went on their platforms and we found less than 50% of the emails were in there, right? And for the guys that we had here, we were finding 70 to 80% of the emails, or 65, 70, 80% of the emails. And many of those didn't even have phone numbers for like 30% of the contacts.
Yeah.
So if you don't have 30% of the contacts for the phone numbers and you have less than 50% of the emails, I didn't even put the effort into dialing and emailing those, because I knew you were clearly going to be losing to these vendors that we currently use.
Right. Why would you? Yeah.
Correct. So these three are the finalists. That is clear to us. And if other companies want to participate, we're happy to have them participate in future experiments. But they're going to participate under these rules, because these rules prevent people from putting extra effort into an experiment that then gives them the reputation that they're great when they're not, right? We're in the search of truth. We're not in the search of like, whatever. We're in the search of truth here.
Yeah, and this is why this is so good, right? I mean, this process, any company could take and replicate for themselves for their own ICP and find their own vendor with the best data quality for their company. I mean, that's fantastic.
100%. And the way we work the leads is important too. So we made 5 phone calls and we sent 5 emails to every lead, right? We only consider a lead to be bounced if they bounce the first email. If they bounce on the 3rd email or the 4th email, it might have been that they didn't like our messaging and then click us on bounce. So that's why you're seeing that some of these vendors have a 0% bounce rate. We also made sure our email reputation score was high. We ran tests on Mail Tester and so on. Our SPF was declared DKIM, DMARC. Like, we know how to do these things, so we did it accurately. And we called 5 times different days of the week, right? It's not like we always call this lead on Tuesday. Like
Sure.
some people might work 4 days a week. Some people might have day full of meetings on Tuesday. So we wanted to give everybody an accurate amount of time. And as you can imagine, working through 800 leads, we used 4 different SDRs for this. But it took us like 2.5 months because calling each lead 5 times, emailing 5 times, giving them a little bit of rest in between touches, like doing all that is not an easy experiment to do. And we still believe that 790 leads is too low. The next experiment, we want to run it with like much more manpower. But what happens is smaller organizations, if you have somewhere between 0 and 6 SDRs, running this type of experiment for a long time could hurt your business a lot. We luckily can take a little bit of a hit and still be fine because the value of this data is incredibly huge because we have so many clients, so many companies. I can increase my company pricing for the SDRs and how much I charge. There's so many benefits. For you guys, you're welcome to replicate it, just like any science experiment that is published in a journal. It should be replicable across clients. And if you have a marketing persona, I'd love for you to talk to me. I can help you set it up on whatever. But the next step is 6 different SDRs. And I think we're doing 4 or 5 different personas. We're going to do HR, we're going to do operations, we're going to do engineering, and then we're going to do marketing.
That's awesome. So just because I'm curious, these are for actual Ulti-Sales clients, is that correct? Like you?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm going to a live client. I'm saying, hey man, our connect rate might go down 15 to 20%, or maybe 30 to 40% because we're not going to be using all the vendors, but we really want to test it. Would you mind if we have a month where we, rather than exceeding goals by 30 or 40%, we're only going to hit 70 or 80% of our quota?
But we learned.
And they're like,
yeah.
Well, if after that you can tell me what vendor to use, and after that you're going to go from where you are today to 20% more for the rest of eternity,
right.
I have a plan to work with you, Tito, for another 4 years. I think the short-term hit over the long-term benefit is high. So I volunteered to experiment with my company.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like stoked about it because our clients trust us so much, and they appreciate the fact that we're running a very scientifically controlled data experiment. And yeah, so we're stoked.
So another really good question from Christopher Krellin. He's wondering, in addition to the metrics that you're showing here, percent emails, percent bounce, percent connect, did you incorporate cost? So are you looking at like a cost per lead, or are you factoring in like the labor of your SDRs or the cost of the credits across each one of these platforms? Is that a factor that you wove into the mix?
I'm not going to reveal that in the experiment for you guys due to my respect for all these vendors. I'm a user of all of them. I love them all. We might have a different cost than other people. And different vendors have different costs. I'd feel fairly annoyed if somebody puts an experiment out and tells exactly how much I charge them and whatever else. But once I review the vendors in a few minutes after some of the questions are off regarding the methodology, you guys can look at what's your cost per lead. And here's what I would encourage you to do. The way we've analyzed it in-house is, let's say vendor 1 charges $1, vendor 2 charges 50 cents, vendor 3 charges 25 cents, right? It's not only the cost per lead, but how long does it take to find that lead? If I can upload a CSV and get a CSV down of all the contacts, all enriched, and that takes me 1 minute for 100 leads versus another platform where I need to go one by one and click get data, and then I need to wait 3 days for them to send me the data, there's a cost of 1, labor, and 2, wait. So the way we measure it is, how much time does it take our Philippines team that makes $6, $7, $8 an hour to find each lead on each vendor, and then how much extra does each vendor charge us on a per lead basis, plus how much do they charge us on an annual basis for license divided by the number of leads that we intend to get for them, and we literally get the cost down to a cent. So it might be 47 cents for a lead from this, 22 cents for a lead from this, 17 cents for a lead from this, and then we're optimizing what data source do we go to first, second, and third. What accuracy do we get? How much data are we losing? And I'm optimizing every single cent because, man, to be honest, I think we use about 5,000 leads plus per month, like net new research 5,000 leads. So right now my cost, over 100,000 a year, 60,000 leads is about $1.50, including cost of labor, including cost of everything. If I can get that down to $1 and the company is going to scale 10x, yes, right now I'm saving myself 40 grand, but if the company grows, I might be saving myself like a 400 grand a year. So to
Mhm.
me, that is all worth it. Especially as a CEO, 400 grand a year would make a dent in our company. So.
Yep, that makes sense. So use a fully weighted cost per lead if you're going to go that route. Don't just look at the cost per credit. Make sure you're incorporating in labor.
That's right.
Um,
You said that
okay.
in like 5 words, and I took like 5 minutes to explain
Your explanation was way better. Way better.
it. Thanks, man.
uh, let's see here. How do you use LinkedIn IDs? Is there anything special you're doing with those LinkedIn IDs on the previous screen that you showed? Or is that just something that pulled in automatically from the LinkedIn? Yeah.
No, that's us. Here's the thing, because and nobody needs to do this. This is just for sales development outsourcing companies. Here's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to recycle leads. So let's say I have 2 companies that are reaching out to VPs of marketing. So I can run a query on all my data sheets across all my clients. You can see that this client is Marpipe. Again, if you guys are running Facebook ads, you should look at Marpipe, number one. Number two, if we're reaching out to marketing personas, and I've already researched this lead within the past 6 months for Marpipe, and I have the VP of marketing at Coca-Cola, and then I have another client who tells me I want to reach out to the VP of marketing at Coca-Cola, I can run a query and
Yeah.
say, do we have this a fuzzy match on first name, last name, company? And if we find it through the LinkedIn ID, we can connect the data and just bring back emails and phone numbers into a new sheet. So nobody needs this other than us. And my competitors, if you're watching this, there you go. More secrets from AltiSales being revealed to you. But yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So Rob Whedon is wondering why, or if you're measuring metrics further in the funnel. So you're measuring, say, like percent connect here. Are you measuring like a more traditional like cold call funnel where you have like percent, let's say, decision maker reached or something like that?
So when we say percent connect, it is to the name, to the person that we connected. So
Okay.
it could be that 20% of the phone numbers actually picked up and said hello, or we got a dial by name directory. But unless we reach the decision maker or somebody of equal title, right? Like you call, they're like, oh no, like they're out of the office, but I'm their, whatever, I'm the other director of marketing. Okay, that's fine. Like that's a phone number that gets picked up, but he's out of the office. Then that counted because we pitched it. But if it's a receptionist, we're not pitching the product, so it didn't count. Further down the funnel, how many opportunities created? I'm not measuring that because we're purely evaluating the data vendors, and that can be dependent on the skill of the SDR. So if the SDR is really good, I literally have SDRs. I'm going to show this today, but I have an SDR that over the past 6 weeks, he's converting about 45 to 48% of the connects into meetings. So somebody says hello, there's a 45% chance he books a meeting with them. This guy's an absolute beast, right? And then we have other SDRs that might be a little bit greener. They're ramping. They're on more difficult campaigns where we haven't really figured out the pitch, where they're at around like 4%, 5%, 6%, right? The industry average, I think, is around there. It's like 3 to 6%. Some good companies, I know some good ones that have revealed some of their metrics, are at 7, 8, 9, 10. We as an average are in the 18 to 22% connect to demo rate. Means if a decision maker says hello, we have 1 out of 5 will book a meeting. And then if you get really, really good, I've trained a few SDRs that have gone into high 30s or even high 40s for periods of time, and then average like high 30s.
Right. And the skill of your SDRs is not at all reflective of the quality of your data, which is what you're running, why you're running this experiment. Right.
Correct. I just care, does it connect or not? And if it connects, that makes me happy enough. The rest is up to us. So I don't want to incorporate, like how much revenue did you generate? Yeah, okay, but there's so many variables. The data will be dirty if we look at that further down the funnel.
Accuracy if excluded. How are you calculating that? Can you dive in a little bit deeper into what that means?
Correct. Yeah. So here's the data. We grabbed these 790 leads, and I said, how many phone connects did we get? Here we got 23 connects out of 255. However, we said if this is the solo provider. So how do we figure this out? We grabbed this vendor, and we didn't just look for the leads here. We looked for the 790 leads on vendor 1. So after we ran the experiment, we came back, we grabbed all the 790 leads, and we went to vendor number 1, and we said, what data do you have for all of these? And then we looked at if vendor 2 had a specific number for one of these connects, do you also vendor one have the same phone number. And if you do have the same phone number, it means that I didn't need to really use vendor two. I could have just used vendor one and I would have still gone disconnect with this lead. So it's not like perfect data, but it gives us like a little bit extra information, meaning if I would have used vendor two and vendor three, how many of the connects that we got here, which is a total of 61, would I have gotten? And the total was, I believe, 36. I think we had another 13 connects. Here's the match on other vendors. So this is what this is calculating. It's grabbing these 13 plus these 23. So vendor one would have connected with 36 out of the 61 connects that we got. Vendor two would have connected to 30 out of the 61. And vendor three would have connected with 32 out of the 61. So that's why the percentages. So if you drop the other two vendors, this is out of the 100% of what the ones we connected with, this is how much you would have connected with yourself.
And the purpose of calculating these metrics is to find out if you should be supplementing your number one choice with, say, a number two or number three choice.
Correct. So if like, imagine this one connected with 9%, this one's 6%, this one's 7%. But when I look at vendor two and I see what numbers we have connected with, I just grab vendor one and I look at these same 270 leads and I have all same 17 numbers. Then why the hell am I using vendor two? Why am I paying for this? Right? I should just throw this in the trash, right? And how about vendor three? So if I were to only use vendor one, I would only get to 60% of my connect rates, or 59.02 if you're going to be accurate, right? 59.02. If I only use vendor two, I would have gone from 49. If I only use vendor three, I would have gone to 52. And now, what if I decide to use two providers? So this is just like one provider, if you want to put it that way, and this is two providers. So what happens if I exclude vendor one? I would have still gotten to 82% of my data just using vendor two and vendor three. If I exclude this, I would have gone still to like 83% of the data using vendor one and vendor three. And if I exclude vendor three, I would have only gone 75%. That's why the 75 is green, because excluding vendor three has the biggest drop. So if I were to cut my contract with one of these three vendors right now that I use, I would not cut it with the vendor three. That's the one that I want to keep the most. But if you have 0 vendors, you just want to buy one, I would buy, in my case, 59, right? So I would buy vendor one, which is funny.
Yep. That is funny. That makes sense, though. Okay, we got a couple questions left, and I think we can move on. Rob Whedon again. Are you counting successfully reaching the voicemail for the desired contact as a connect, or only a connect with a live person?
So for this experiment, we only did live connect with a live person. And the main reason for that is I do this as well. I have a voicemail where I just send all the calls where people will reach my voicemail, but I'll never pick up, right? So we're not counting that as a connect. Now, if we were dialing just once, I would agree that it's a really good strategy to say, if the phone number reached a voicemail, that is a valid number. A lot of data companies that do data verification, they call each number once, and they're like, is this getting to like, if the voicemail says I'm calling Alex, and if the voicemail says, hello, this is John, I'm not available, it's a wrong number, so you don't put it in your platform. And if it says, hey, this is Alex, it's a valid number. Now, it could be that it says, hey, this is Alex, but it's Alex's like 7th phone that's in a drawer for like all the, it's like my Hotmail email. Did the email deliver? Well, yeah, but it's never going to be opened, right? So that's the way we're thinking about it. And because of that, we called each number 5 times on different days of the week, weeks apart. And we also sent an email and make sure that there wasn't an auto responder saying out of the office. So it is well thought through and structured, but that is an excellent question.
One more from Theo Kovalev. You mentioned a course on Coursera a while back on sales data. Do you remember the name of the course?
Yes, research methods. And it's not a sales course. It's a data course that will teach you how to run experiments, be it about data vendors or phone connect rates or email deliverability or whatever. That will help you understand when is an experiment valid. You're going to learn about p-values, standard deviations, confidence intervals, things like that. I don't know anymore like all the like perfect naming conventions and all that, but at least they understand the principles and the concepts. So as long as you have that, that should at least help you understand that, like, when a company puts a study out there that says, hey guys, like, cursing on sales calls increases close rates, so you should curse, and you look at their data, you're like, that is not a valid data experiment, and you're making wrong conclusions from incorrect analyses. You can't have a post-data insight on deviations. You can only have a hypothesis that you test in advance. So to make that data experiment valid, you would have to say, we're going to test over the next 5,000 calls if cursing makes a difference. We're going to grab 2,500 calls, We're going to randomize it. It's going to be completely anonymous. I'm going to ask in 2,500 of these calls, it's going to tell the SDR to curse. So, hey, motherfucker, how's your day going? And see if that increases close rates. I think it's going to lower them. But if you go back into the data and you just search percentage of calls with cursing, how many times did that close? Percentage of times with no cursing, right? Now, here's what might be happening. Hey, this is John. Hey, John, this is Tito from Multisales. Not interested. Click. There was no cursing. And there was a bad result. So
right.
No cursing equals bad result. Well, in the long one, oh, man, I'm so pumped about this damn platform you're going to show me. Increases, but it's not due to the cursing. It's due that cursing is more likely in longer calls, and longer calls are more conducive to right outcomes. So the longer the call, the better the outcome. And if you look at calls that are over 5 minutes long with cursing or without cursing, that effect might completely go away, or it might invert itself. It's just companies running these experiments and providing these insights are not being scientifically diligent with the way they run it. And that's why I run the experiments myself. And the recommendations I give, I want every LinkedIn follower to ever follow me, or every person watching this webinar to always say, I admire Tito's precision in how he runs things and never spreading wrong information. I think it's morally wrong for me to know that my data experiment or that my conclusion of thing is invalid and put it out there just for the claps and the likes and the popularity on LinkedIn. I don't agree with that. So yeah, research methods is the important part. And then I recommend research methods in psychological sciences or in areas of psychology. And the reason for that is gonna start to understand how complex it is, because does coffee link to depression? Good luck finding that one out, huh? And then do ghosts exist, right? You can run an experiment on that, and chances are it will be very inconclusive, but you will learn how you can't discard an idea due to the fact that there's no evidence, but you can't agree that an idea is true unless there's enough evidence, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. That's actually a huge tip, man. I come from an econ background myself, undergrad econ major. So shout out all the econ majors out there. And it's huge. I use it in my everyday life, that just the framework. I also don't remember the exact verbiage for, all of these experiments, P values and T values and et cetera. But just having that framework, it's massive. It allows you to look at the world differently. So highly recommend checking out that course, checking out behavioral economics, anything having to do with that.
Right. So my degree in college was actually behavioral economics and decision neuroscience. And I graduated under the guidance of Dan Ariely, who's a famous author. I recommend lots of his books, especially Predictably Irrational. So yeah, you guys should check that out as well.
I've heard Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow by Daniel Kahneman is a fantastic book as well. It dives into a lot of the topics we were just talking about. All right.
Very dense. Cool.
We'll stop that.
I want to reveal the vendors in a second. Any other questions before we do that? Or should we do that first?
Except for that, yeah, we just got that question. Perhaps I missed this, but you're not sharing which vendor is 1, 2, or 3, correct? Tito.
We are. Are you ready?
I think we're ready.
Let's go. That's it.
Boom.
Those are the vendors. And again, the reason I didn't share the vendors up front is because we wanted the methodology to be correct first and the agreement. And then be careful about the things that I said, right? So I said email, LeadIQ seems to provide more emails than, for example, in this case, ZoomInfo. However, some more bounce. So I would almost consider this a tie. I try to minimize my bounce rate. So on emails, we're fairly even. The other thing to note is that the statistical significance of the variance in connect rate over the phone isn't huge. Like, we might have gone lucky. We connected with 23. Here we're connected with 21. It's not like if this experiment was like 100 times bigger and we were connected with 2300 versus 2100, I would tell you that's statistically significant. But this is a little bit like rolling the dice. Imagine rolling the dice 255 times, and in this case, you got 23 sixes. And in this case, you got 21 sixes. You roll with your right hand, you get 23 sixes. You roll with your left hand, you get 21 sixes. Can we now conclude that you should cut off your left hand and that your left hand is useless and that you always got to roll with your right hand? Not yet. Like,
yeah.
It might be just variance. It might be nothing. Now, if I'm going to take an educated guess, which is what I run the experiment for, I would educatedly guess on if you're going to buy one solo provider, Lead IQ is a good bet. If you're going to buy two, make sure Zoom Info is one of the two. And what I recommend is, regardless of if you're buying, regardless of what you do, the drop even from 100 to 83%, that 16.39% drop is too high. So I literally, I have an invoice in my inbox to buy another 20,000 plus credits of Lucia, because I'm not going to lose 16% of my data. Are you crazy?
Right.
I'm going to buy all three. Now, I have the budget, and I have the money, and I have the clients, and all that. And for us, a 1% increase connect rate is high. So for the moment, I hope this helps you. And acknowledge, please, this is marketing personas only of companies that run Facebook ads. It's a very niche market, right? So if you go to all personas and all markets, or if you only target Fortune 500, or the results might be different, I recommend you take a screenshot of this right now or whatever, and you run your own experiment in a very similar fashion. Or if you want to contact me and have me help you run one, I'd love to collaborate with you guys. What we're doing next is we're going to bump these numbers to 1,500 leads or 1,000 leads, and then we're going to run it across 4 different personas, and then I'm going to come back with the data at the end of 2020, because it's going to be a longer experiment, but it's going to be a more valid experiment.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, so, you have your initial results here, but really, like, you got to run it longer, right? This is not statistically significant, like you're saying. You need more data. Yeah.
Unfortunately not. Now, here's what I can tell you. I tested a few other vendors that participated in the experiment, and a few other vendors quit. And to those, I can tell you with high accuracy that any of these 3 vendors would have beaten any of the other ones I tested.
Yep.
Right? And then there was one vendor, right, that came in, said, hey, here's our platform. We tried their platform. We got the data. We emailed them. We're like, hey, we decided to exclude you from the experiment because when we extracted the data, it wasn't enough. And the guy responded, oh, that's very strange. Let me verify what happened. And then he probably looked at what data we tried to pull, and he said, oh, seems like there was a glitch. Here's the actual data. And he sent us a new file.
Classic.
With added data. Mm-hmm. We decided to exclude them from now. It's inconclusive in their end, and we're happy to include them in the next data experiment, as long as we're not going to tell them what data we need. They're just going to give access to the platform, and whatever we pull, we pull. There's a chance that there was a glitch, and we didn't pull the right data. But there's a chance that they also might have gone and supplemented the data we were trying to pull from other vendors or whatever else. So I can't make conclusions on those. But these 3 are your best. So if you're going to buy one data source, buy one of these 3. If you're going to buy 2, buy one of these, 2 of these 3. If you're going to buy 3, buy all these 3. That's my highest recommendation as somebody who's obsessed about these numbers. And I hope that was helpful. I'm happy to continue to answer questions if more are coming through.
Yeah, we're actually getting a lot coming through. So we're getting a lot of questions actually on our tangent off into statistical significance and behavioral economics kind of spurred some thought. A lot of questions on statistical significance. So James Guerra here, it is statistically significant already, isn't it? The sample size is greater than 30. So James, I would recommend, even just like Googling statistical significance calculator. There's a lot of calculators out there that allow you to do that really quickly and easily. It has nothing to do with like some set number of contacts, 30, 40, 50. it has more to do with like your total population size, and then that percent of the population that you're testing. Anything you would add to that, Tito?
Yeah, I would say that there's all these myths about 30 being a good number to test, and if it's less than 30, I think that that this is the insight. Like if you have less than 30 data points, it doesn't matter how different the results are. Like one connects with all 30, the other one connects with 0. It might still not be statistical significant. So you need at least 31. I think that's the insight. But here's the way I want you to think through it. Grab dice, grab one with your right hand, one with your left hand, throw 30 times to the right hand, 30 times to the left hand, count the number of sixes that you get, and tell me which of your hands it's better at rolling the dice. And do that 10 days in a row, and then tell me if it is the same hand that's better each of the 10 days, right? And then run those 10 days, 30 rolls per day, a month later, and tell me if the same hand still wins, and if they're winning by a lot or not a lot. And what you will find is if the dice are well created, you will never find statistical significance because the hand you roll the dice with has 0 effect on where it lands. And therefore, you could run 1 billion times and it will still not be statistical significant. So here, the difference between 23 and 21 or 21 and 17 is not huge. Maybe the 17 to 23 has a little bit more validity, but that's also what we're recommending. If you're going to buy one, buy this one over this one. Or if you're going to buy two, buy this one over this one. But it's a rule of thumb recommendation. It is not by any means saying we have determined that cursing increases close rates, or we're determining that vendor 3 is the best vendor. Not whatsoever, right? So hopefully that clarifies things.
It does, I think. Annie Roach, what about testing for efficiency / speed to lead? Any data on that? So I'll take a shot on this and then I'll get your thoughts. So based on my understanding of what we just went over, Tito, we're testing for data quality and not metrics lower in the funnel, right? This is kind of goes back to that conversation we had earlier in the call.
Agree. I think here's what Annie's asking. She's asking, how about if you can get the leads from one tool faster than from another tool? Does that make that tool better? And this is what we're recommending everybody. Hey, I'm just showing the tools. What you should do is figure out what is your labor cost and what is your per lead cost. And then figure out what is your best tool. Because again, if you're going to buy one data provider, and I'm just going to throw examples there, and LeadIQ wants to charge you $1 per lead, but ZoomInfo wants to charge you like 10 cents per lead, and you need 1 million leads, is it really worth, $900,000 to go from 52 to 59? What if the opposite is also true? Now, what if LeadIQ charges you 10 cents per lead and ZoomInfo charges you $1 per lead? Well, like very obvious, better, at least at this very small rule of thumb recommendation, LeadIQ seems better. They're also cheaper. It's better. And also, how much time does it take you to get 1 million leads out of LeadIQ versus 1 million leads out of ZoomInfo?
I see.
Right? If this takes 1 minute versus this takes 1 million minutes because it's 1 minute per lead, what is your cost of labor, right? As a rule of thumb, any US-based employee, I estimate their fully loaded cost of taxes, insurance, benefits, management costs, blah, 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 at around like $50 an hour. If you have a research team abroad like I do, my team makes about $6 to $8 an hour, fully loaded, right? Then you have the cost of leads. They can research, let's say, 10 leads per hour, 20 leads, or 60 leads per hour, 1 per minute, 60 leads per hour. They cost $6 an hour, 10 cents a lead, right? Plus whatever the vendors charge me. So yes, take it into consideration. But Annie or whoever asked this, I might have a different cost per lead for LeadIQ and Lucia and ZoomInfo versus what you get. And I don't want to reveal how much I pay because, to be honest, some of these vendors do give me data at a discounted price, and I have non-disclosure agreements. I can't share how much I pay. But go talk to all 3 vendors and ask them how much does it cost, and then make your own decisions.
Yeah, makes sense. Anonymous attendee for Zoom, we're using their old database or the new combined Discover.org Zoom database?
Great. No, the combined platform. Yeah. ZoomInfo plus Discover.org combined database.
Here's an interesting question. Do you think that these stats might change as privacy rules change in the US, such as CCPA or GDPR?
Beautiful question. I want to run the experiment again in another year and see what happens in California. right?
Mm-hmm.
I also, as explained, we had a vendor that wanted to participate in the experiment. They came to this meeting where we shared the experiment results and the experiment methodology, and we said it was going to be US only, and they said, sorry guys, we're really strong in Europe, we're not so good in US, we're going to have to drop out. When you run in Europe, do it. So again, if you're looking for databases that are outside of US and Canada, go somewhere else. And remember, this experiment wasn't 100% US, but it was like 97% US, and it's companies running ads in the US. So if your VP of marketing is in Sweden and he's running ads into the US, there might have been 1 or 2 leads in there, and those do count. But we just wanted to test it how we test it on a day-to-day basis. What are the leads I'm giving my SDRs? Those are my leads. So this experiment is very good for me in my circumstances. In your circumstances, it might be slightly different.
Mm-hmm. Andrew wants us to go back a couple slides to the data experiment steps, like the actual methodology that you took. Can we do that for him real quick?
Yes.
Perfect. And hey guys, I actually took a screenshot of this. So in the webinar follow-up, I will attach this as an image just so you guys have it. You can print it out, you can have it in front of you if you want to try to replicate this at your own company.
Yep.
Cool. Let's see.
He just wanted the image so he can take a screenshot,
Yeah.
probably.
He just wanted, while we're
it.
talking, he just wanted it in front of him. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Let's see. Elric is wondering if you know any good data providers for Latin America or APAC regions.
Not anybody that I've tested or I would recommend. Yeah, so sorry about that. If I had somebody, I would more than happily share.
I mean, I'd imagine it's just like, do this, right? Like do this process for your own company using data providers that service those regions.
Yeah, I would actually talk to any vendor that says we can do it. And again, remember, you need a platform. You can't rely on, we'll send you a sample data sheet, send us what leads you want. They will, if they're smart, right, and they're sneaky, they're going to cheat on it, which I think is like 99.99% of data vendors. So okay. These are the good ones that are trustworthy and reliable. So I would talk to these 3 first, and if they say they don't have the data, ask your network, ask on LinkedIn, find other means.
Yep. Casper, LeadIQ has a much higher bounce rates, but also a higher percentage of correct emails found. Any thoughts of correlation or reason?
Yes, when you use LeadIQ, you can determine if you they have verified emails and then unverified emails. We use both verified and unverified, which means that we were guessing a little bit more. It depends how you want to use it. If you only want to use verified, you might be more at around the 70% rate. So again, when I look at emails and I look at these, I usually penalize you at an equal rate. So I would say that 74.5 minus 4.3, you are like 70.2. It really depends how you want to think about it and how much you care about your bounce rate. If you bounce too much, it can hurt your email deliverability. But if you're emailing each person like 12 times or 17 times and your cadences are long, you're not going to really bounce too much, because once it's bounced, you're not emailing that one again. So even though it says 4%, at the end it might be 1%. I don't think anybody has a 15% bounce rate, which would be horrible. And therefore, if you're not doing any phone calls whatsoever, I'd say that vendor 1 or vendor 3, I'm indifferent. I would recommend either. Whichever gives you a better cost per lead at scale, it's easier to use, adapts itself more to your process, is not going to be statistically significant. Yeah. And heads up, if vendor 2 has a better process for you and allows you to do 10% more work, it is more than worth it to go to vendor 2 as well. So don't discard them just because their email is a little bit less accurate than the other 2.
And that's why you're calculating your fully weighted cost per lead, which includes like speed to lead or labor costs, etc.
Labor.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep. Okay. Any particular reason Clearbit was not included / used? It sounds like, they're welcome.
They don't provide. As far as I understand, they don't provide phone numbers. I've reached out to them through inquiries on their website, and they didn't get back to me.
Okay.
So if you know anybody at Clearbit and they do provide phone numbers, we're more than happy to use them on experiment number 2.
Perfect. That was all the questions, man. That was 24 total questions. That's a lot of questions.
That's a ton. Hopefully this will be, released, recorded, and it will be a great one to watch for a lot of people. I know we put a last minute. If you have friends that should have watched this, go, send them the link, tell them about it, share it in your company Slack, tell your data ops person that they got to look at this. And also follow me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of stuff about experiments that I'm running, ideas that I'm operating with. I have a superstar SDR series showing how to be, the best SDR that you could ever be. I'm going to start doing a superstar AE series, talking to the best AEs that I can find across the United States or across the world, and interviewing them and dissecting their methodology. I'm all about finding excellence and finding truth. So if that is something that you find appealing, go on LinkedIn, find me. I am Tito Bort, and you can. I'm gonna open my LinkedIn profile. You can just click follow or connect, and yeah, do interact with my stuff. I'm a big SDR BDR advocate. So
Awesome, man. Thank you, Tito. Everyone on the webinar still, we're going to be sending a follow-up within 24 hours or so. It's going to have the recording. I included a picture of the data experiment methodology. That's going to be in there too. Go follow Tito. He's producing content like a madman. It's all good stuff. Thank you so much for sticking around for the full hour. We're getting Tito back on, actually, I think like March 30th or something. Sometime late March, we're doing another one with Tito. So join that one too. It's going to be good stuff. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks again, Tito.
thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.